What is going on? I want to welcome you from Half Court for today, Wednesday, November 9th, 2022. I am your host, Sean Murphy, alongside my guy, Jeff Iafredi, looking fine as always, my guy. Always good to see you, brother. Thank you so much for being here. How are you doing today, my man?
Dude, I'm doing good. I mean, Pistons basketball, you get to see them. We're watching it right now. It's live versus the Thunder. And it's nice to see these guys compete, man. I know Friday, and I know I'm kind of just – I don't want to mention this too. Friday, to see what happened with the Cavaliers. I wasn't in attendance. I don't know if I should say luckily, but seeing what happened, no Darius Garland, no Donovan Mitchell, those nights are going to happen. So it's nice to see the entire process this season for the Pistons. I know people get frustrated, but I love it. I love the process, man. It's a long one, but
yeah.
There's a bright side to it.
Yeah, the 82 game stretch is such a stretch of ups and downs. It's such a marathon of unexpected things and a lot of exciting runs, but nothing more exciting than having this other guy here with us because it is my guy, Troy Sergey. Troy, good to see you, my friend, as always. How's Indiana treating you, my friend?
It's good. Going to Pacers and Nuggets on Wednesday. Get to see Joker in person. That'll be a fun.
So when this comes out, you'll be there tonight. You get to see Benedict Mathurin and Nikola Jokic.
Yes, sure will be, and that'll be a great opportunity to see him, one of my favorite players in person. But I want to touch on Jeff's point as my intro as well. The process should be fun because I think when we get to a place where we're winning basketball games consistently, we're seeing our young guys get better, we'll know how it evolved, and we'll be able to appreciate it that much more.
And we'll talk about that process more here in a second because that's what we do here in each and every week. If you did not know, because this is from Half Court. Each every week we talk things all NBA basketball as well as all things Detroit Pistons. If you don't know, now you know. And if you like that, be sure you subscribe to the channel. Be sure you join the conversation in the comment section down below. But also be sure to find us on your favorite podcast service, whichever one you like, either Spotify, iTunes, or you're a weird person and use other ones. Those are there as well. But most importantly, be sure to leave a like, share some love, and most importantly, welcome to the family. But anyway, let's talk basketball because that's what we do. Gentlemen, it has been a hell of a week in the NBA world. And there are so many different directions that we could start this pod.
Some more positive than others.
I want to spend as much of this podcast as humanly possible talking about basketball. I feel like we covered the Kyrie situation pretty well last pod. The only update is that he's suspended now, which he should have been, right? But I want to start specifically with the Rookie of the Year race because I think that's something that's really close to us Pistons fans. And I think we're in a spot that I didn't expect to be in, which is I think Jaden Ivey is both outperforming expectations and making a phenomenal case to be Rookie of the Year. And also, Paolo Banchero is so unbelievably good that he might have literally wrapped up the case in 10 games. Jeff, am I crazy for saying that?
No, you're not. I think this year we covered a lot before the season too. There's going to be a lot of guys in that race, but now watching, I know we're only 10 games in, but it's Paolo Banchero and then Benedict Mathurin, Keegan, Ivey, and so on. Like there's a drop off there after Paolo. And we talked about a situation he was walking into as well. It's like he's the man in Orlando. Clearly, that's the case. The usage rate, they look at him as the man. Like he has the maturity. He's a franchise player. Don't get me wrong. But looking at him through 10 games, like we kind of talked about this before the pod too. Like he's a grown man. Like like his maturity level at such a young age and his game too. I mean, again, 3-point shot, all that stuff can come, but to average 23 through 10 games, you're in the conversation now. Previous rookies, you could talk about Zion, only 24 games played that year, by the way. Luka, Donovan Mitchell, like he's in a good company, and we haven't seen something like this in quite some time, and it's incredible.
But I mean, guys, he's not even putting
alone.
He's not even putting his name in the conversation of those great rookies. He's putting his name in the conversation with the top players in the league right now. Only Kevin Durant has more 20-point games this season than Paolo Banchero, who has 9 himself. I mean, Troy, we knew this guy was going to be effective coming into the league day one. we thought that he was going to be a pretty good scorer. If you were to ask me like what I thought his average was going to be this year, I would have guessed like 17, 18 points a game. This guy is already at 9 20-point games, and we just got to double-digit game counts on the season for the Magic. I mean, this is crazy what we're seeing out of Paolo.
Yeah. And to answer your question, no, Sean, you're not crazy by saying, obviously, Jaden Ivey's had a great year for us, and he's exceeding his expectations, but he's not going to win Rookie of the Year because of Paolo. And Sean, call me crazy for this one, but I think Paolo is making a case that he could even be an all-star this year, which we haven't seen that since Blake Griffin in 2009.
I can't dispute that. Like, there's a world where, like, I mean, because let's just put it even more in perspective, because it doesn't even stop there. This was the one in particular I saw yesterday that blew me away. Paolo this season, more points per game than Zion, Anthony Davis, Karl Anthony Towns, Brandon Ingram, Bradley Beal, Nikola Jokic. More rebounds per game than Bam, Kristaps, Ayton, Turner, Wood, and Mobley. I mean, this guy's doing it all over the court. I mean, even though it's not like translating to wins because he's on the Orlando Magic, and part of the problem of the Orlando Magic is that he has to have that type of usage in his rookie season. But like the fact that he's not only handling it, but like what impressed me in particular, because we saw him in person opening night, and that was when it was like, oh yeah, no, this guy's going to be good, because he got to 30 plus points and he didn't even take a shot from beyond the arc. He wasn't being rushed. He was getting to his spots. He was using his aggression. He was getting on the glass. Like, he just looked ready. And that's the thing. And that's the thing I think we just really underestimated leading up to the draft, is just how good this guy is day one.
Yeah. And there's plenty of room to grow as well. And that's why, listen, I have my notebook in my room currently, but that's something that I jot a lot of stuff down before the draft. And one thing I wrote next to Paolo Banchero is this: if you could pick anybody in the top 10, who's going to be the all-star first? And this is before he went number one overall. We didn't think he was going number one. It was Paolo, like that. And to Troy's point about being an all-star this year, like, this is, you talk about the usage rate he's going to have in Orlando. Yes, but he's a polished scorer already, and he's got plenty of room to grow, don't get me wrong, but like you said, Sean, we went there opening night, we saw his first game in the NBA. Man, it didn't look like it, I'll tell you that. I mean, the guy was very comfortable, and that's what you want in a number one overall pick. Now, it was funny during the draft when we were covering it, it's like, oh, Paolo's going number one. Now it makes sense, like, this guy, and I still believe that he'll be the first all-star out of this class because of his potential scoring the basketball. I mean, it's incredible.
I mean, guys, he had a 33-16 game against Sacramento over the weekend. And it's just, we talk about what he's doing day one, but also, I mean, again, Ivey has just been phenomenal. You talk about his ability to score in the league day one. I think he's a better shooter than people give him credit. Granted, you know, we're tuning into as a recording, you know, we're also watching this Pistons Oklahoma City Thunder game. And in the first half, obviously, Jaden Ivey wasn't having the greatest shooting performance. However, no one else on the team really was. And in my opinion, I think a lot of is like what makes him so great, and the things that he's doing great, is just being overshadowed by how awesome Cade's been, because Cade's been the true stellar standout performer on the team, right? However, Ivey's certainly been playing really well too. And, you know, I would certainly say, like, I would say no matter what, I would put Paolo first in the ranking. I don't think it's disputable. And then whatever argument you wanted to make between Ivey, Benedict Mathurin, and some of these other kids, like, I'm more than welcome to have that argument. But I mean, guys, I feel like what's most important, the number one's tied up, and from there, this entire class is just really good, right away.
It makes me even more sad too that we're not going to be able to see Chet this year, because I would love to see him in this race as well. I think this draft class, when it's all said and done, you're going to look back and see, you know, 5, 6, 7, maybe even 8 guys. And listen, Shaedon Sharpe too, another guy that was picked in the top 10 or a little after that, around there, to Portland. Even him, I mean, being the minutes he's gotten lately, and he's had a bigger opportunity. Like, there's a lot of talent in this draft class, man. And it's
you could make an argument. You can make an argument that the top 7 picks in this draft have all-star potential.
Right.
Yeah. Easily.
Yeah. And Shaedon Sharpe has been better early than I've anticipated. And I kind of want to talk about Portland at some point too, just because how much of a pleasant surprise they've been. And I really feel like, the job that Chauncey Billups is doing is really starting to shine in this year. Whereas last year, I don't really know how evident it was, but I think, like ultimately for me, like I look at that Thunder team, to your guys' point. I really, really quickly want to touch on this because like you said, I wonder what they would have been with Chet in the lineup, because with just SGA, they're damn competitive with how good he's been, because he's been an all-star caliber guard that we could be talking about as like a top 10 player in the league if he keeps progressing like this, because he's averaging 30 plus points a game. He's doing it in high efficiency. He's a lot like Cade, where he does it in the mid-range, but right now he's better. He's a better perimeter shooter than Cade. The guy's just a stud.
No, I was just gonna say, and the most impressive thing, Sean, and I'll just say this quickly, is he's doing it on both ends. Like that's the part. Like the Oklahoma City Thunder right now is second in the league in steals per game. And I think they average like 9.1 steals per game. He has like 2.2 of that. So he's a big part of what they do defensively. And Shea, man, like that, he's an all-star. Like that definitely, no question about it this year. Playing with Josh, and Giddey makes it better.
Go ahead, Jeff. Sorry.
No, you're good. That's all I was gonna say. Having Giddey too, a playmaker like him, just makes him even better.
He's looking to score the ball first too, and he did that. We saw a glimpse of that last year too, so much. But I think he's just such a good combo guard that can score the ball at just such high volume. And for me, I think going along with Chet, like you said, next year, it could be a good addition to that Thunder team.
Yeah,
they're in a good rebuild.
Especially what he's going to do for them on the back end, because right now for this team, if you're really looking at like their true weakness, it's that size, it's that rim protector, it's that anchor on the defensive end, and the guy that can help this team do a lot of the little things that take them over the top and make them go from being a 4-5 team being a 6-3 and 7-2 team. Right. Like I think, like with Chet, like what people rave about Chet and what I love about Chet, like, yeah, sure, he can do things offensively and as far as getting you buckets, but he's just a great all around basketball player. Like, insanely high IQ, really tries on the defensive end, really is a team first guy, high leadership intangibles, but then in addition, just his instincts, are part of what make him great. Like he's like a 7'3" version of Draymond Green with his overall IQ. And that's going to make them damn good next year when he comes back. And I mean, let's be honest, like, assuming that things kind of even out a little bit more, more than likely Oklahoma City is going to have another decent lottery pick. And how many picks do they have this year? Like 900. So they're going to be more than just fine. It's been really fun to watch. Shout out to Cone. Really hope we ended up winning this game so that I can eventually come back and brag to you about that. But everyone that's in the live chat right now will be making fun of me because apparently they will not win. So, but anyway, speaking of Pistons, Jeff, you and I made a video to start the week, and the title and it says on the thumbnail, we need to talk Killian Hayes. And the reason why, and Troy, I'm not sure if you saw this video, but Killian Hayes has not been good this season. In fact, he's regressing at an alarming rate. And looking at where he's been, looking at where he's heading, looking at like the trajectory of his season, it's been kind of eerie to say the least. And Troy, I'm not sure, like I said, I'm not sure if you saw that video.
I saw it.
You saw? Did you see Killian Hayes' shot chart in that video?
I did. And it was just alarming. I think, well, of course the misses was the big part, but I saw too, I know why there's all the misses. Yeah. Yep. There it is. And it's because there seems to be, when he shoots the ball, a lack of confidence. There seems to be in his brain, when that shot goes up, it's going to miss. And often when the game of basketball, Jeff, you were a player back in the day, when you think you're going to miss, you're probably going to miss. And that's just, to me, I want to look at more of the psychological aspect of why he's struggling so much. And it sounds like from press conferences and Dwayne Casey especially, the team isn't really putting much pressure on him on the offensive end, which tells me he's putting a lot of that on himself. Agreed with that?
Well, yeah, even Dwayne Casey said himself that that there shouldn't be this much pressure on Killian. Like, the pressure is coming from himself. And like, obviously there's an inherent pressure in what they do, right? Because it is a competitive business. Guys come in every single year with the potential to take your job. Detroit's drafted 2 point guards back to back after drafting Killian Hayes in the first place. But at the same time, they did extend him this summer. They did give him the promise of at least another year in theory. Whether, not even necessarily a guaranteed another year on that team, but another year in the NBA, right? So like, this should be runway for him to go out and take chances and try to improve and be better. And the problem is he's just a shell of last year. And last year, if we're being kind, he was still one of the worst players in the league.
Right.
And so, and the other thing too, James, and this is actually an angle that we didn't really cover during our video, Jeff, but James Edwards III brought up, because there's this narrative across the fan base of that was the number 7 overall pick, and we wasted it on a guy like Killian. And James brought up a good point, because it's like we think of the number 7 pick and we think of the NFL draft, where it's like the number 7 pick, you have the opportunity to go get a Pro Bowl caliber player, right? Because there's 200 plus players that enter an NFL draft each and every season. There's 60 guys that enter an NBA draft. And whenever you're looking at a class, generally speaking, once you get out of the top 3 to top 5, it's a crapshoot from there. It's all guessing. It's all relying on your scouting and potential unknown scenarios. And to back that up, here is a list of every number 7 pick since 2000.
Yep.
There are 2 All-Stars on here, Stephen Curry and Jamal Murray. I believe Kirk Heinrich made the All-Star game once, so that's like a one-time All-Star. Julius Randle did win Most Improved Player. And
Eric Gordon's a veteran.
Eric Gordon's a veteran. Did Julius Randle make the All-Star game? I don't think he did.
I don't think so.
But if not, he was a fringe All-Star guy. He won MIP. But otherwise,
Lauri Markkanen might, though. Lauri
Markkanen might. But even then, no one expected that from Lauri Markkanen.
Randle did make one All-Star team.
Okay. So there are 4 guys out of this list of 20 that have made All-Star games. Maybe Luol Deng, it's 5. But that's the point. There's only 2 surefire All-Stars on this list.
Right.
And even then, calling Jamal Murray a surefire All-Star is kind of shaky. Right? So, overall, not saying that we shouldn't expect something out of the number 7 overall pick, but to say that the odds of us getting anything other than a role player,
right?
It's just, guys, it's just not how this works. I mean, Shaedon Sharpe being available at number 7 was an anomaly. And even then, the only reason he was available, he didn't play last year.
Right.
He didn't play. Like,
and Killian coming out was kind of looked at as a project as well. So those expectations were already there. And to your point, looking at it historically, like, and that's why I love that James brought up the NFL point, because with the NBA, like, you're not going to find guys like Steph Curry being really the only true, I guess, superstar that panned out. Jamal Murray, obviously, Julius Randle, those guys. But the rest, everyone else on that list, Sean, I see a very common theme, and that's solid contributors, role players, guys that had long NBA careers like an Eric Gordon. But for Killian Hayes, like, it frustrates me too, because in that same draft class, you found Isaiah Stewart and Saddiq Bey. So I can see if you missed down all 3 of those picks, you'd be frustrated with Troy Weaver. But it's like, you got 2 guys, Saddiq Bey, who's going to be a solid player in the NBA for a while. And I would say, honestly, safely the same thing with Isaiah Stewart. So I don't get the frustration. I think it's just someone, you got to blame somebody. You got to point the finger at somebody. And it doesn't help that Tyrese Halliburton is a great player. That just kind of sprinkles it on top.
Yeah, that's the root of it.
The other thing, too,
it gives Darko vibes. Go ahead, Sean.
First of all, I think one thing to consider, that was a COVID draft in Troy Weaver's
Very
first
true.
season.
Very true.
So as far as the scouting and availability of certain things, wasn't quite there as much as years past. Also, I mean, again, he did hit on two other draft picks that year as well. I think another thing to consider, and Troy, I want to throw this over to you, after this. I think a lot of times it's important to not only listen to the way they talk about their players, like GMs and coaches. It's also important to listen to like their player comparisons, because that gives you a track of what they expect, right?
Mm-hmm.
With Cade, Troy Weaver compared him to Larry Bird. With Jalen Duren, they've compared him to Sean Kemp. You know who Troy Weaver compared Killian Hayes to on draft night?
Can I guess? It's probably not James Harden.
It's not James Harden. You know who it is?
All right.
Goran Dragic.
Right.
Goran Dragic isn't an all-star.
Which means if that was his ceiling all along, there's nothing for us Pistons fans to be that butthurt about.
Well, not saying that there's nothing to be butthurt about. I think there is a justifiable reason to not be thrilled to be disappointed with his progress, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, I think we saw Killian Hayes make a couple sweet shots in some highlights from French tape, and I think we expected that to be the norm every single night. And I think we saw the passing, and I think we made him to be something that he just wasn't on the offensive end. And I think, obviously, I think the other thing to consider with a lot of these foreign guys too, Troy, you're coming over here. It's a completely different culture. It's a completely different game. It's a completely different lifestyle, man. It's just, it's all different.
Yeah.
You can't necessarily predict how these guys are going to react to it.
That's right. Absolutely right. And I think with Killian too, the shooting struggles from the first year and the third year now are similar. And I think with we all know that he's more of a playmaker than a
scorer. Worse.
Right.
Like the problem is, Troy, if you look at his shooting, and I'm sorry to interrupt, but like when you look at his totals objectively, like granted, he had a little bit more of a sample size, in year two than he did year one, 66 games, 26, but his 3-point percentage year one, 28%, year two, 26%, year three, 17%, year one, his field goal percentage, 35%, improved to 38% last year. Now 18%.
Yeah, which is
you know what it seems like too? It seems like Killian Hayes, and this isn't, I'm not saying everyone kind of already knows this, but it seems like he's putting more pressure on himself than there really is on him. And I think for Killian, listen, I love it for a guy like Killian Hayes who has confidence in himself, has aspirations, wants to be an all-star in this league, like a lot of young players do. But the reality is you got to embrace your role. You got to embrace who you are and what your role is on your current team. And for Killian Hayes, it's not to be Larry Bird or, the other comparisons Troy Weaver made. He said Goran Dragic. Like it's a solid player. Now, will he get to that point? I don't know. But the point is, he just has to play within himself and not overthink these things, because the fact that Dwayne has the confidence in him, and I love this quote. This is from Amari Sankofa. Dwayne Casey on Killian Hayes. We're here to develop the young man. Third year in the league, had some ups and downs, but we have to give him every opportunity to succeed and work with him because he is a young player. Casey, and he also says, tweeted this out. Casey said, if this was a championship season, the leash would be shorter for Hayes, but in a rebuilding season, they have every incentive to give him opportunities to improve. And that's kind of the thing that Killian Hayes needs to kind of understand at this point. It's like, listen, you're not playing for your job yet. That's going to come, and that's the reality of being an NBA player. There's going to be guys that are coming after your job night in, night out. Every year, they're going to add players. But the reality is, we know Killian's better than this. And I know the last two seasons hasn't shot the best percentage, but what he's doing this year, like shooting wise, I don't know if this is still the case, but what was he, like 3 for 18 from three when I looked like 2 days ago? It's just, it's abysmal. This is worse
3 of 18.
Expected. So
3 of 18 from three, 10 of 55 overall from the field. And currently at this point in the season, I want to double check that this is correct before I do say it. Yep. Killian Hayes has more assists than points.
See, that's And again, if people want to say, well, that's Killian Hayes, that's who he is, I disagree with that. I think there's just something happening mentally. To your point, Troy, you mentioned it earlier, and we've been talking about this. I don't think it's anything physically. I mean, for Killian Hayes, he has all the tools, but it's something he can't get over mentally. Right. And that's something he's going to have to figure out, whether it's the team working with him, getting him help, whatever it is. It's just frustrating to see. I think that's why Pistons fans are just so frustrated with him, man, lately.
And to that point, the only other player in the league that has more assists than points, Ben Simmons.
Another player that struggles with that stuff. I mean,
so when you look at the parallels from the mental aspect, that's where I see it. The unfortunate reality, though, for Killian Hayes, you know what the difference is between Ben Simmons and Killian Hayes? Ben Simmons has another 3 to 4 years left of about $90 to $120 million on his max contract extension he got after his rookie year.
And he's made all-star teams too.
Yeah, he's made all-star teams. He has more of a provable track record. In theory, he would get another job and another chance. You know what I mean?
Right.
But also, no matter what happens, he secured generational wealth for his family. He's good, right?
Sure.
But for Killian Hayes, you have one more year guaranteed, and the money that you're going to get in your next contract is not going to be far from a minimum deal. In fact, I would wager it's going to be a minimum deal.
Right.
So
right.
That's just the way it is. And, again, I don't know. I don't know what the solution is at this point because, obviously you can just keep giving him reps on the NBA level. You could say, he's still better on defense than Corey Joseph. That second unit, he still, can be a playmaker. Maybe if Alec Burks and Marvin Bagley coming back into the lineup, maybe that helps with spreading the floor and, having more threats on the offensive end that gives him more room to operate. Or maybe he needs to go down to the G League or perhaps just needs a new environment because, I don't think it's the culture. I don't think it's the coaching. I don't think it's the player development staff. I don't think it's the athleticism. I think it's everything up here. And obviously, with his mental health, I think we all hope he's okay to start, right? But
and it doesn't help. It doesn't help also that Troy's drafted back-to-back guards, following, probably not that that's a problem, but for Killian, it's like mentally, it's like, well, if I don't put this thing together, like if I don't figure it out soon, I'm going to have to change destinations or change teams at some point. Like it's not going to be in Detroit.
He's highly replaceable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think too, I mean, overseas could be a stepping stone too. That could be helpful. The hard part is when you watch this guy play, there's more moments than not where I feel like he's not an NBA player more than I see moments that he is. Am I fair to say that?
I think that's fair, to be honest with you.
Yeah. I mean, it sucks because I don't want to come off as harsh or writing off the guy, but to your point,
just what you see.
I honestly think I would be curious to see if Saben Lee was given the same amount of minutes, what his production would be, because I would wager it'd be more than this.
Yeah. And that's something you can't question. And that's something you can't teach too is hard. And Saben Lee, listen, as frustrating as it was at times to watch Saben Lee, we knew you never questioned his will. Like that was Saben Lee.
You gave Killian Hayes Saben Lee's mentality.
Oh my God.
All-star.
Yeah.
I'm serious. All-star, especially with the clip he fired with in the G League. My God.
MVP.
Yeah, Killian would actually be James Harden if he had Saben Lee's mentality.
And you know what it seems like too? And I was just watching tonight's game, and I don't know if this is an overreaction, but I'm just going to hear your guys' thoughts on it. Watching him early in the game, them kind of refraining to put him on Shea. Like you think for Killian, as good of a defender as he is, you'd think he'd see more minutes, at least strictly guarding Shea or guarding Josh Giddey, whoever it is. I feel like, and I don't know if this is the actual answer, this is just me just talking. Is Dwayne trying to not put as much of a defensive load on him to kind of alleviate some of that pressure and get him to play better offensively? If you get what I'm saying, and you saw in the game, he played a little better, but that kind of concerns me too, because watching the game, you want Killian to be guarding those guys, but at the same time, is it like you want him just to focus on his offense and what's been going on lately? Like, I don't know. I don't have an answer.
So Dwayne Casey, he actually came out I believe I believe this was earlier today, and he actually said the opposite. He actually said that he wants Killian to focus on being a quarterback on the defensive end, focus on that end, and the offense will get there. Like, so I to me, like, I don't know if that's just because they're using him in more lineups, like with Cade, or like with like Hamidou Diallo, like his athleticism and how he's been performing on defense of late. Maybe just giving Killian a different assignment, but I think to that point, I think part of it is getting his confidence back on that end too, because part of the struggles haven't just been on the offensive end. I mean, he almost has as many personal fouls as he has points.
Sure.
And
Sure.
When he's having these 4 or 5 foul games and putting the team in the bonus, and like, because the other thing is, like, not every foul is like a smart foul, right? Like, there's going to be times obviously where you foul because there's going to be a center going up for a dunk, and it's like, well, I'm going to trust that that's more likely to go in than him shooting at the free throw line, but if you're letting guys, if you're letting stars, or if you're letting like stellar players like Trae Young get to the free throw line, like, how many times did they let Trae Young and the Hawks get to the line? And it was like, even Killian in particular, it was like, dude, just stop
It kind of
touching
made the
his hip
difference
when
in
he
the
goes
first.
up for a free throw, like, or for a layup. Holy cow.
And that doesn't help him offensively, because you're getting in foul trouble. You're not establishing a rhythm. You're not able to get in rhythm. He's frustrated. Like, you can see visibly. I was at the game. It was a week ago. Speaking of the Hawks, I was at that game, the second game, not the first one. And Killian's dad was there, and you saw Killian get in foul trouble, go to the bench, and just be frustrated. And I get it, rightfully so. But at the same time, like, it's not helping him to be able to stay on the floor. Like, that's the issue as well. So to your point, like, that's another part of it. That's an issue.
Well, and you talk about confidence. What is it going to do for your confidence when the one thing that you do well, you don't do well anymore?
True.
I mean, Troy, when you talk about confidence, like, especially like, especially as someone, because you were a shooter, right? So like, when you went in, like, I know that you have confidence in shooting the basketball, but what about those nights when you weren't confident shooting? What about those nights when, like, you felt like you were missing assignments on defense? Like, how helpless can that be?
More helpless. Helpless is an understatement, Sean, because when the shots aren't falling and the defense isn't there either, you're on the bench for the rest of the game. I'm sorry. That's how my
throw in that 20,000 plus people are watching in the arena. Hundreds of thousands of people are tuning in at home, whether on both local networks and League Pass.
You're being judged by every play.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm saying is like obviously all three of us could never do that. But like, that's what I'm saying is I don't think the league, the National Basketball Association, isn't the place for him. I think he could succeed more in Europe.
I wonder personally, because and I do want to get to like more league wide stuff here in a second. I do wonder specifically with Killian, if going to a team like the Spurs or the Heat,
right,
or even the Pacers, like with Rick Carlisle, like maybe these teams like specifically like the Spurs, or even like these teams that have established cultures, that have history of long success, maybe even a team like Miami that's a little bit better right now, in a place where he's like, because I don't know if the NBA isn't for him, but maybe even that role of being that second point, that first guy off the bench, maybe even that's just too big for him. Maybe at this point, maybe for a little bit, he needs to be the 13th guy on a roster. He needs to be the 12th or 11th man, and like work with development coaches, be in the background, come to the practice facility and be a ball hawk, play hard in practice. Like, if you have to go do like stints in the G League, go do them and work your ass off. Like, that's, to me, like, that's going to be the thing. Cause like, I'm not going to write him off. I mean, we saw Lauri Markkanen and Geno Smith this year, that you can't write anybody off anymore. But, like, it's just, he has too much talent for me to just definitively write him off.
And to add to that too, before you say anything, Troy, it's culture matters, I think, with any player. And you look at Killian Hayes, let's just use Miami, for example. If you were to go somewhere else like Miami, or you mentioned San Antonio, which is a great destination as well, San Antonio is a little different from this, but in terms of when you go to Miami, you know who's the dude. You at least know, all right, this is Jimmy Butler's team. You know where you're going to fit in. There's going to be less pressure on you because at that point with the Pistons, in comparison, it's like the Pistons are in a different spot. Like there's a lot of competition. Guys are competing for roles. There's a lot of pressure on those players to get better. With Miami, it's like, listen, you don't have to be the dude. You just have to be a part of this process. You just have to contribute. You can average your 6 points and everyone could be okay with it. I just think it's completely different situations. To your point, I could see him excelling in a different environment. And that has nothing, it's not a knock on the Pistons. I think that's just a refreshment for him mentally. Could benefit his career.
Yeah. I mean, we've seen with guys, that like, even when Julius Randle went from the Lakers and the Pelicans to the Knicks, which technically the Knicks wasn't a better situation. We saw Julius Randle blossom and shine, right? We saw Lonzo Ball in his third situation in Chicago before he had injuries. We saw him blossoming into the player that we thought he could be, right? Like a lot of the times it comes down to fit. And like, even though like San Antonio doesn't have like their guy, they do in the sense have their guy because their guy isn't a player. It's Greg Popovich. And, to be able to go there and be in a place like with Pop and like these types of great coaches, like maybe that's what he needs. But at the same time, like he's with John Beilein, Dwayne Casey, like the Pistons have one of the best player development staffs in the entire league. So
there's not that much pressure. There's really no pressure.
Yeah.
And Sean, though, I'm just not there comparing Killian to Alonzo or an early Julius Randle.
Neither am I. But I'm just pointing out cases of guys who maybe weren't necessarily living up to potential, and then suddenly were able to, in new situations, find new success. Right?
Sure. Yeah. I'm still not fully on board with that, but I can respect.
I'm not saying that's what he's. I'm not saying that's what he's going to be.
Okay.
I'm saying that is like the scenario, like he would have to hope for, like if he were to go to a new team, like that would have to be his hope. That would have to be his work ethic and his goal, right?
Yeah.
I'm not saying that's gonna happen. I'm saying that's what he would want to happen.
But I'm also not going to say he's not an NBA player yet. I'm not there yet. I think he's not trending in the right direction, but I don't want to sit here and say I think being overseas, that stuff, or going to the G League. I mean, yes, the G League could help him with his confidence. Going overseas could definitely help him with his confidence. But I'm not there yet. I still have faith in Killian. I just think something mentally has to change, and maybe a destination's the answer. I mean, it could be.
Yeah, and obviously we're going to keep evaluating this as the season goes on.
Plenty of games left.
Yeah, plenty of games.
Yeah.
And, as you've even seen in the game that we're watching tonight as recording, things can literally happen and flip in an instant. I mean, we saw the Pistons start the third quarter down 15. They're up 5 with a minute and a half to go. No one expected Detroit to win this game.
Yeah.
And here we are.
And by the way, Shea, 33 points, the next leading scorer, 11 off the bench.
Yeah.
Domination.
Unreal.
He's
unreal.
He's a different animal.
I'm not going to lie. I don't know. I don't know like what it would take to make this happen, but like I wouldn't say no to an SGA Cade backcourt. I wouldn't say no to having both of them.
Killian for Shea straight up. We got to do it.
I was going to
Killian for Shea. Who says no?
Imagine that. I mean, Shea, Cade, and Ivy. You play Cade at the 3. I mean, the playmaker galore, two-way players.
OKC wouldn't let us keep Ivy in that world.
Cone is probably cringing right now watching.
Cone is like, I'm never coming on this pod again. But don't do that, Cone. We miss you. But no, man, it's one of those things where I think as a whole we'll see where the team develops, because I think a lot of people are not just disappointed in Killian, but disappointed in where the team's at right now. But again, I think in the next couple of weeks, we'll see this team at full strength for the first time. And I think that is going to tell us a lot of things.
Yeah.
From Half Court is brought to you by Manscaped. When we talk about post players, there is few better players in the restricted area than our friends over at Manscaped. With great products such as the Lawnmower 4.0 with skin-safe technology, the Weed Whacker, their deodorants, lotions, and more, Manscaped is unrivaled when it comes to the men's hygiene game, serving over 8 million balls worldwide. That's a lot of testicles, ladies and gentlemen. So if you're finding yourself in need of Manscaped products, be sure to go to manscaped.com and use code HALFCOURT at checkout, because that can get you 20% off plus free shipping. Our friends at Manscaped sent us these products, and I can tell you that they are absolutely for real. I have been absolutely satisfied and in love with their entire product line, from boxers, t-shirts, the Lawnmower 4.0 to the Weed Whacker ear and nose trimmer. You can really not go wrong. Be sure to go to manscaped.com and use code HALFCOURT at checkout for 20% off plus free shipping. Thank you again to our friends at Manscaped for sponsoring this video.
Yeah. Hey, by the way, just I'm not trying to get too off topic, but this is worth just at least mentioning. Shams just tweeted, after 18 NBA seasons, 8-time All-Star Dwight Howard has signed a deal with the Tawai.
I saw that. I was wondering if I should bring this up.
So, no, bring it up. Bring it up.
So per Shams, after 18 NBA seasons, NBA All-Star
Dwight, by the way, most random thing ever.
Dwight Howard has signed a deal with the Taiwanese pro team, Taiwan Leopards.
Speaking of playing overseas,
Dwight Howard is now playing in Taiwan.
Oh, he's going to put up prime Dwight numbers, probably.
Are we about to see Dwight Howard go for like 50 and 50 overseas, Troy?
I'm ready for it. I'm always like Dwight Howard, man, with his Magic years. It's unfortunate, some of the injuries and just the downfall, especially with the Lakers. Every really trip to the Lakers, he won a chip. But I would love nothing more than a 50-50 with
Shaq in Taiwan.
Wait, is this a agenda for Dwight to get back in the league? I'm going to go to Taiwan.
I don't think so, Jeff.
I'm going to put up 30 and 20.
Because
he was offended. I just saw his interview with Shannon Sharp talking about, like, I don't know why I'm not on an NBA.
Right. Another one. He's on the All the Smoke podcast too. And said the same thing. Yeah.
I'm sure that's his goal. I don't know if that goal will be accomplished. I think Dwight Howard showed that he's a really good role player, that he can be a really good role player. But at the same time, I think the spectacle that is Dwight just isn't worth bringing in unless you truly believe he's the missing piece to you winning a championship. But the problem is, what team's missing piece these days is Dwight Howard
in his 18th season.
Yeah, exactly.
A tough one.
Yeah,
I would say, only Rob Pelinka would pick up the phone.
Right. Yeah.
Never count him out.
Yeah, I mean, if there's picks involved, Sam Presti would always pick up the phone.
Very true.
And whatever he can do to get picks. But guys, NBA wide, this has been, right now we're on the night of, night before the election. And so with that, the NBA is not having any games on election day. And so every NBA team is playing today. And with that, I think that's a great opportunity, since every single team is playing as a recording today. Let's look at the teams around the league that are impressing us and depressing us today. I want to start. I'm impressed by the Cleveland Cavaliers.
Oh, yeah.
I'm depressed by the Philadelphia 76ers. Let's start with Cleveland. They are deep. We saw them come into Detroit Friday night. No Donovan Mitchell, no Darius Garland, no problem. Jarrett Allen and Evan Mobley were awesome. Kevin Love came off the bench and looked like Timberwolves Kevin Love. I haven't seen that Kevin Love in a long time.
Yeah.
And guys, could this and the other piece of it too, Donovan Mitchell, by the way, new level of good.
Hey, we're on the topic of changing destinations. There's another one.
Yeah, probably the biggest one.
I mean, guys, could the Cavaliers make the finals this year? I mean, I that might be crazy to say, especially because the other team in the East that's been incredible has been the Milwaukee Bucks, who I'm pretty sure as of today have yet to lose a game.
They're
right
in
now,
neck and neck with the Hawks right now. Yeah,
they're neck and neck in the Hawks right now. But even then, we're still talking about them losing their first game in November.
Right.
Man, I would love a Hawks Cavaliers playoff series. My gosh. And to your point,
Bucks Cavs Eastern Conference Finals.
Yeah, just because of the backcourts. But yes, for the Bucks, I think really in the East, that's my take. I think it's the Bucks, and then there's the Celtics, and then kind of everybody else. I'm gonna be honest with you. I have a lot of. I still think the Bucks with Chris Middleton, they have yet to be beaten in the postseason. So that's gonna be interesting to see. But for the Cleveland Cavaliers, this is all credit goes another one to JB Bickerstaff. I mean, what he's done this year, and that was before Darius Garland got back, and the fact that they were winning without him. They had Karis LeVert starting. And now he's back, and you took the words out of my mouth, Sean. They're deep. And that's what's going to translate, in my opinion, come the postseason. Because you saw Donovan Mitchell with Utah, it was a lot of hero ball. He doesn't have to do that with this Cavaliers team. There's so many options offensively, and I didn't even get to defensively with Evan Mobley and Jared Allen, what they can do, because that was always the biggest criticism with Donovan Mitchell and even Darius Garland to a certain extent. It's just they're a small backcourt. Like those guys aren't either one of them aren't great defenders, but boy, they make up for it with how they can play as a team. So they're definitely a dark horse, Sean. I mean, no question about it.
Yeah,
what we're seeing with Darius Garland, though, too. I mean, we saw a huge jump from him last year, but we're even seeing a bigger jump, I think, this year. And to go with Donovan Mitchell's performance, and obviously Mobley's gotten better, and I just feel like this team could make a deep run in the playoffs. Not saying finals whatsoever, because Boston and Milwaukee guys, I have a hard time seeing an Eastern Conference Finals that doesn't include those two teams. But man, Cleveland's up there.
Yeah, most certainly. The Atlanta Hawks have been really good too. Being able to see them in two separate games as well. That's another team with depth and in shooting and the ability to do a lot of different things. But guys, when looking at the current landscape of the East, I don't think there are two teams that are more disappointing or are more surprising that they're in the place that they are than the Philadelphia 76ers and the Miami Heat. I want to focus on Philadelphia real quick because the news did come out this week that James Harden with a fracture in his foot is going to miss at least a month of the season. The Philadelphia 76ers have already, were struggling with him in the lineup being as great as he's been. And now they're going to be in a situation where Tyrese Maxey is going to have to step in and be that consistent guy alongside Joel Embiid on a night-to-night basis. And sure, Tyrese Maxey's really good, but he's not the playmaker that James Harden is.
Right.
And, the other thing too is that it's pretty apparent that it feels like there's an imminent coaching change on the horizon in Philly. And I don't know if it's going to happen in season. I don't know if it's going to happen mid-season. I don't know if it's going to happen post-season. I don't know if we're going to wake up tomorrow morning with a notification from Shams saying that, that Doc Rivers is the new coach of the Brooklyn Nets or something. You never know. But I do feel pretty firm in the fact that I don't really like the way their season has started. I haven't really loved what I've seen of them thus far, and I don't really think that their trajectory is especially with seeing how the rest of the Eastern Conference is. This team to me looked awesome on paper after the trade deadline last year. I could see this team not getting past the first round again.
Yeah. And honestly, to put it bluntly, Sean, they're soft. Like they really are. That the 76ers, adding PJ Tucker, you were expecting that to kind of change. But what didn't change is the lack of depth they have, especially off the bench. Like the common theme between Miami and the 76ers, they both don't have a bench. And it's even gotten so bad in Miami to the point where now they're starting Tyler Hero. They need him that bad. And that was the biggest criticism coming off from last year is how are you going to surround Jimmy Butler with more talent? They didn't do it. And they put their faith in Kyle Lowry, which at this point is burnt out completely. He's a role player. And Tyler Hero is as good as he is. He's not a starting 2 guard that's going to take you or help you get to an Eastern Conference Finals or even deep in the postseason. I'm sorry. So both those teams, I think 76ers have been more disappointing given the talent they have. But you're right. I think if you're going to point the finger, it's got to be at Doc Rivers, because it was already hot coming into the offseason, now into this season, and it's only gotten worse. And I get James Harden dealing with a foot injury. You have Embiid, who's been sick lately. He's missed the last couple games. It does not matter. They've looked terrible. And again, if you're going to point the finger in Philly, it's definitely at the head coach. And in Miami, it's at the general manager. Because, my God, you got to eventually build, especially in the East and how competitive it is. We talk about the drop-off between the Bucks and the Celtics. You got to make a move to get – and they were in the Donovan Mitchell talks, but it didn't get them anything. And it's because they really don't have any assets in Miami. So, again, I don't think there was ever a deal to be done. And both those teams are in a tough situation, man. Both of them. Coming up, being in the second round in the postseason and now being at home.
We talk about how bad – the Pistons bench was earlier, right? The Pistons are 29th in bench scoring per game, 23.1 points. The only team worse on their bench than the Detroit Pistons is the Philadelphia 76ers.
Ooh.
And the difference is the Pistons are a rebuilding team. The 76ers have championship aspirations, Troy.
Right. Yeah.
In what world? I mean, we're even seeing with the Warriors as well. Another team that, if we're talking about disappointments, they're probably up there as well. I think they're facing almost the exact same problem as Philly, in the sense that, like, yes, Golden State has a bench that can generate points, but I mean, even Jeff, you and I saw in person, like, that bench that second unit is a shell of itself, especially defensively. And they were relying on their young prospects to fill those holes, and they're not. And it just feels like they're really missing guys like Otto Porter, Gary Payton Jr. And and on Philly's end, it just they went and they got PJ Tucker and they made their starting lineup better, but your second unit sucks. Matisse Thybulle, you don't even trust him to have consistent minutes. And even then, like, he can't shoot. Like, I don't know what it just seems to me like it's just heading in a downward slope. And, especially this feels like this was like the year for them to go and make it happen. It seems like they're squandering that opportunity. Granted, we're early on, but it's not good so far, guys.
No.
And with the Sixers point, I think another two key things is we've seen some okay performances by Tyrese Maxey, and I think him and Tobias Harris too. I feel like there's potential there too, as two guys who have all the potential in the world to kind of take over the team. Not saying that they're even remotely Embiid and Harden, but they're guys that can contribute a lot on the offensive end, that can put them over the hump to win games. And I don't really see them stepping up fully to that performance. And I was expecting that this year. That's kind of where I'm getting at. Is in the offseason, I was really hoping that Maxey and Harris would take a step together as a duo, but not quite seeing that.
Yeah, especially Harris too, given what he's being paid. I watched the last game. They didn't have Harden or Embiid, and Harris was basically a no-show. He had like 13 points. I'm like, what? He's is the moment for Harris to.
He's been one of the worst max contracts in the league for a couple years now. Yeah, and I like Tobias Harris, but he's a guy that, he does a lot of things in the offensive end that you like, but when it comes around to like having to pay him, it's like, I don't really know what number I'd be happy to pay Tobias Harris. I sure as hell know it's not a max contract. And so, the other team that we brought up there, the Miami Heat, I think there needs to be a conversation to be had at some point about the job that the Miami Heat front office has done since LeBron has left. And I don't mean that as a compliment, because yes, they got Jimmy Butler and they made a finals run and they got to the Eastern Conference Finals last year. But if you look at what they're set up for now and going forward, I mean, Jimmy Butler is in year 11. He's not getting any younger. He's 33. And so more than likely, he's not going to be able to carry this team forever. And Kyle Lowry, they were hoping he was going to be this steady force for them and be close to Toronto Lowry. He's not that guy anymore. He's just not. And when I look at this roster, like when they lost, like it felt like they really couldn't afford to lose PJ Tucker. And if they did, they needed to like be hell bent on getting a replacement. I have no idea, guys, how these guys haven't picked up the phone and gotten Jay Crowder in the building like yesterday. Because when you look at this roster from like the top down, from like the defensive end, like the intensity, like, and then you also just look at some of the contracts they have, like Duncan Robinson, paying him what you're paying him, Kyle Lowry's contract, like Bam is as great of a player as he is. Has he shown that he wants to be like, that you want him to be one of your like centerpiece players on your franchise? You know what I mean? Like I didn't like the picture coming into the season. And so the fact that that the clarity's coming out fuzzy, I'm not surprised. What are your guys' thoughts?
You go first, Troy.
Oh, okay, I'll go first. Yeah, I think the big thing too is I wanted to see more out of Bam too, and it just seems like I don't want to say their finals or their Eastern Conference Finals run was a fluke, because I think that they played the 76ers so well to get there, and really gave Boston a run for the money too, to actually beat them in 7 games. But I think there was a lot with that team that I had questions about moving into this year, such as even putting such a load on Jimmy Butler himself. I'm not sure if, I mean, we see so much of Jimmy Butler, but I'm not sure if he's the first option on a championship team.
No.
We saw him make the finals run back in 2020, the COVID year, but I just don't think that you can put all that weight on his shoulders. And again, I think a Bam is a great guy who would have all the potential to step up and be a guy that could push them over the hump.
Right.
As far as, maybe I would call it pushing over the hump going back to the finals this year, because I feel like that would be a ceiling in my opinion. But I don't even think that they have that going for them, that because you're not seeing as much production on the defensive end either too with Bam. Tyler Hero has been himself, I think, for the most part, at least some of the games that I've watched.
Yeah, he's been good. Like
Yeah.
Tyler Hero is solid, but he's about where he was at last year.
Sure.
But I mean, if I'm being frank, I think he's about what he's going to be.
Right.
I don't see this star jump out of Tyler Hero. Like I think he's a good player. I think he's a guy who's capable of getting 20 points in any given night. But I don't think he's anything beyond that.
Right.
No, and that's the kind of the same thoughts I share with Tyler Hero. As much as I do enjoy watching Tyler Hero, I think the reality is he's not going to be your starting 2 guard on a team that's going to the finals. I'm sorry. He is a player that, if the Miami Heat had, and I like to compare it to when the Lakers early with LeBron, they had a lot of young pieces around him, but at the end of the day, they're like, you know what? We need an Anthony Davis. We need somebody to help LeBron age and kind of take some of that pressure off of him. Now, hindsight 2020, it's actually done the opposite. But at the time, that's what you're thinking, and that's what the Lakers were thinking. And I think with Jimmy right now, what the Miami Heat need to do, and I know they were in conversations with Donovan, but you need someone like that to come in and alleviate some of that pressure. And I'm going to be honest with you, even if you got to trade Bam Adebayo, you do it at this point.
But here's the problem, though, guys. They don't have assets to trade.
Right. You really, your only 2 are Hero and Bam. Like, that's it.
And like, even then, like the roster has, like, when you talk about just salary, like they for years have just been signing guys to terrible contracts.
Oh, that Duncan Robinson one.
Like the Duncan Robinson contract, the Hassan Whiteside contract, like even like I get why you pay Bam, and obviously he's a great talent, but it just, to me, like feels like an Andre Drummond type situation where it's like, what's your ceiling here?
The end goal here, yeah.
yeah, what are we doing here? And so that's the thing. Like I love that they always are trying to be competitive and that their ultimate goal and focus is to field the best team possible in each and every season, and that their team culture, and we're gonna be a winning program. But at the same time, it seems to me like they need to take a hint like the Spurs did and know when it's time to flip the page and move on. And I think that's a culture in particular that could rebuild through the draft. I maybe wonder if it's because Pat Riley just doesn't want to, and he wants his final seasons to just field a competitive roster, right?
Definitely part of it.
But at the same time, if I'm a fan, I don't want my franchise making decisions based off that. That's just me. But
and that's a fair point of view.
Yeah,
really, I share that same sentiment with you.
Yeah, and then, just finally, guys. I mean, we touched on it a little bit already. Golden State. What's going on here? I mean, like, what's missing? Because I mean, obviously, I don't think it's because of the punch. I don't think like I feel like the team, for the most part, from the outward view, has moved past that. But when you they're not beating the teams they're supposed to be beating. They're defensively, they're 28th in the league right now, when last year they were second to only Boston.
You just answered the question right there. That's what's holding them back. Like for I'm not worried about Golden State talent wise. I think part of it, and you kind of talked about this earlier and you hinted at it, you're relying on a lot of more young guys coming off your bench. Like now they're kind of a significant part of your rotation. I think that's part of the reason why they've regressed defensively, because you don't have Otto Porter. You don't have those veteran presence, especially on the defensive end. So it's going to take some time for Golden State, and you're coming off a finals win. So I'm not too concerned, but that's the answer right there, Sean, is them what the jump they made defensively backwards is the reason why they're in this situation. Yeah, it really is.
Yeah. I mean, Troy, we talked for so long about what made Golden State so good on the offensive end. But Troy, the underrated piece of what's made this team so great over the course of this entire run has been their defense. Mm-hmm. And when I went back and watched the finals again this past season, what impressed me about the finals run that Golden State had, it wasn't their offensive attack. It was what they did on defense to make Boston a non-factor on that end. And so if you're telling me that they can't even stop, with all due respect to like Charlotte, and even though I love Detroit, but like I love my Pistons, but everyone was feasting against Golden State, especially when the starting lineup came off the court, especially when you're putting, and this is where it gets even more uncomfortable for the Warriors, because now it's like, what the hell do we do? Especially when they have guys like James Wiseman and Jonathan Kuminga on the court.
Moses Moody, another one.
And when the problem is those guys who you've spent high draft picks on, especially James Wiseman, who even in that, are you saying that, like, especially like, even the Jonathan Kuminga draft, who's a guy they could have taken at 7 overall? Franz Wagner. Yeah. You telling me Franz Wagner wouldn't be awesome in a Golden State Warriors jersey?
Yeah, he'd be great.
Yeah. So again, hindsight's 2020, but they're in a tricky situation, guys, where they might either have to move off of these young guys now and cash in and get the best bench possible to keep making a run, or they might have to give up on possible title aspirations this season in exchange for the development and the long-term health and growth of the Warriors. And that is a really difficult situation to make, or decision to make, especially when Steph Curry's playing as amazingly as he is.
And especially considering how much money they have tied up into all their players as well. Like, they're in cap hell. So going out and getting help probably isn't your number one option, but it is the reality. Like, if you're talking before the trade deadline and these young guys aren't coming along defensively and you're still struggling, there's going to have to be a move made somewhere. And this kind of speaks to what we talked about before, is kind of Draymond's future in Golden State. I mean, we can all mutually probably agree. I don't know if you guys disagree, but it's definitely limited. I don't think there's any question about that. You're not paying Draymond And that's going to be the piece to move in the future, probably this offseason, I'd guess.
Right.
Yeah. Mind, especially with the extension they made with both Jordan Poole, but also Andrew. Yeah. It's pretty clear in that direction, Troy. Pretty clear they're going young.
Right. Yeah, well, they have to because of those things that you mentioned as well. And I think going back to the defensive end, that is so underrated because of the volume that they've shooting the 3-point shot. And we know the Splash Bros, right? I mean, all that leading into what they had success, of course, in the late 2016, 17 championship and 18 even as well. But even the 2019 run came up short against Toronto. I mean, we think about the Warriors as 3-point shooters. We think about their ability to move the ball and to shoot the ball at such an incredible speed and pace like we've really never seen before and percentage. But you can't win alone with that type of basketball. And we've seen them, and we've seen Draymond. I mean, I don't know if the Warriors have as success as they did, especially even this last year, without Draymond Green's strong performance as well. So to know that this era is slowly coming to an end, I guess we could have predicted it in some ways. It's definitely difficult, but they got to get these young guys willing to play on the offensive end too. And I would like a little more out of their second unit on the defensive end. And you mentioned that earlier, Sean, but I think that's something too that I want to quote Shaq there. Your stars will get you to the finals, but it's your role players who win it for you. And I think even with such an organization like the Warriors, that quote is still the same.
Yeah. And, at the end of the day, I think there's still a lot of reasons, for Golden State to be optimistic. I do think they also have to see better from Jordan Poole as well. I think he has to step up in certain ways and improve. I think, especially now that he has a big contract extension, there's going to be more expectations with him. So, definitely, at the end of the day with Steve Kerr, I'm going to be a little less concerned than I am with, say, Doc Rivers in Philly right now,
Sure.
So, but with that, guys, it's that time of the pod where we normally take a trip from Mount Rushmore. But today, Troy, I believe we're playing another round of Should He and Will He? Is that correct?
That is right, Sean. And I got a name for us today. Speaking of the Warriors, a guy that you can make a great argument for, but also statistically, you could make an argument that he shouldn't be a Hall of Famer. And that's Andre Iguodala.
No. Andre Iguodala is absolutely a Hall of Famer.
Oh, I agree with you, Sean. I agree with you. But if you're talking a stat game, hard to say. But as a winner standpoint of my qualifications for a Hall of Famer, yes. Should he? Yes. Will he? Also yes, because of those MVP finals.
So when you bring up the stats, it's an interesting point. Because if you look at his box scores, and even if you go on Pro Basketball Reference, it's actually really interesting, Troy. You're actually making a really good point. Because if you look at, he hasn't averaged double-digit points a game since 2013 when he was playing for Denver.
Correct.
And
that's my argument.
And according to Pro Basketball Reference, Andre Iguodala's Hall of Fame probability is 12.7%.
Yeah, it's worth talking about.
This is a guy that has one of the best resumes in basketball over the past 20 years. But if you were to look solely at stats, you would not see that. But guys, I would argue that's part of why he's going to be a Hall of Famer, is that what made him great and what made him so integral a part of that team. Obviously, at the beginning of his career, he had the points, he had that point where he was an all-star, he had the points where his play was stellar. But not only like his impact on that Warriors franchise, from a culture standpoint, the 4-time champion, the finals MVP, the moments that he's been a part of, like to me, like when you talk about, there's certain points where guys are inducted into the Hall of Fame And it's not necessarily because of the box sheet. It's also the impact they had on the game, the impact they had in the league, and the impact they had on their teammates. And to me, this is one of those situations where he's being inducted for a lot of those reasons. In addition, like it's not going to be because of you're never going to look at one particular season from a statistical standpoint and go, Andre Iguodala. But at the same time, I mean, when you look at his career and the things that he's done, there's few players who have had his resume.
Yeah, and that's exactly how I feel about it too, Sean. There's two ways to look at it. I'm very stingy when it comes to the Hall of Fame. I take into account player success and individual talent, and I think with Iggy, he's so far above the individual success and how much he's made an impact that like the individual performances or the individual stats, especially later when he was traded to Golden State from Philly, like that stuff doesn't really matter to me anymore. I'm going to be honest with you. With Iggy, he's an exception. To be a finals MVP, 4-time NBA champion, the impact he has or had on the Warriors and still has on the Warriors, I think it just shows how much Iggy means to that team and overall to an organization that has been winning championships. So for me, Iggy's a Hall of Famer, but certainly it just depends how they weigh it. But no doubt winning, because again, it's not all about as much as I want to say it is, because I'm very biased when it comes to that. Like Ben Wallace, for example, the amount of awards he had and the impact he had on winning. Yes, the stats weren't there, but the awards were. For Iggy, it's championships. It's being a finals MVP and leaving his mark on the history of the game. And I think that matters. So for me, Iggy's a Hall of Famer, man. No doubt about it.
I also feel like the other piece with Iguodala as well is I feel like it's very similar to the impact of a guy like a Udonis Haslem, where he's just so integral to the culture into the franchise. And like when you talk about players that people look up to in the game, or guys that that are looked at as leaders in the league, like that's just been him. So I think a lot of times a lot of players are evaluated by what they do on the stat sheet, but I think this is like one of those important important points where you talk about when you just talk about guys who can impact winning and guys who are great team guys. That's Andre Iguodala. I mean, and that's the other thing. He fills every role, like especially like at his peak with Golden State, he literally filled whatever need they needed from him. Whether it was to be a playmaker, whether it was to be a spot up shooter, whether it was to be a stopper on the defensive end, whether it was to go get a bucket, like he did it all. And that was the thing that made him so great. And yeah, man, just special player, right?
Yeah. And remember, even in Philly, his rookie year with Iverson, still they called them the two AIs, right?
So that's another thing. I actually remember when I was a kid, I got to see in 2005 game 1 of the first round. It was Pistons and 76ers. I went to that game, and not only did I get to see Allen Iverson, but the other player that blew me away from their team as a kid, Andre Iguodala. And I remember being able to see him his rookie year, and I was like, he's going to be awesome. I was right.
Hall of Famer, right?
Yeah, man. And now it's crazy because now he's still in the league, and now I'm in my mid-20s. But
the next part of that, Sean, is we saw Paolo's debut. We all did. You too, Troy. So now we can say, we were there when Paolo had his debut. And
I was there for Cade's debut last year too. So I've technically been at the debut of the last 2 #1 overall picks. So
But by the way, guys, we will always remember that dunk, that Paolo's dunk.
Oh my God! I remember Duran's poster.
Duran's dunk gave me a little I know we cover the team professionally, but I was there as a fan that day. That gave me a little bit of a chub.
Sean, that goes out the window when Duran puts Okiki in a body bag. All of that stuff goes out the window.
Even Kool-Aid, he said he was sitting by scouts, and we were actually up there. We went and saw he was sitting by a scout from the Knicks and a scout from the Clippers. He even said those guys were you know what I mean?
The Knicks scout called the Knicks organization and said, "You know what? We fucked up bad. This man is different."
They were just like, Mr. Dolan, listen, man, I'm gonna level with you. We done up. This man is 18 and he's putting kids in body bags, man.
Guys in body bags, man. Should have been a Nick.
Oh my gosh. But you know who else is putting people in body bags? From Half Court. Because each and every week we out here killing the game when it comes to basketball podcasts. We're not actually killing people. Please do not come at us. From Half Court is not a murdering place, rather a place of love and peace and positivity. Blah, blah, blah. Anyway, From Half Court, the place that you come to for your basketball needs, all things NBA, all things Pistons. If you like that, if you like this podcast, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and also find us in all your podcast services and share with your friends. Also, if you want to join the conversation and talk to us individually, you can follow my guy Jeff at Jeff Iafrady. You can follow my guy Troy at Troy Sergey44. And if you're oh so generous and want to follow me on the app that Elon Musk built, you can follow me at Sean Half Court. But with that, folks, we want to thank you all so much for tuning in, and we will catch you guys next time from Half Court. Sure to subscribe.